lot to get through today, and I think we'll all be slightly exhausted at the end of it. But anyway, so hi everyone, I'm Kate. A little bit about me. I spent little over just about 10 years in local government and over 20 years in marketing and communications. I'm pretty much a data nerd. I love searching and delving into analytics to sort of understand human behaviour better. I don't have a degree in data analytics. Everything that I know is self-taught and through experience and what I've learned on the job. I'm hoping that everything that I take you through today is quite self-explanatory and easy to follow. What I'll do is I'll share my screen with you now, and I'm hoping this is going to work because I'm using two screens. So let's just see if we can do this. So if I do that. So can people see that yet? No, hang on, share. Yeah, excellent. So what I'm going to go through today, as you'll see there, is I'm going to take you a step-by-step through Google Analytics, from setting up an account through to actually looking at dashboards and how to understand them and how to interpret them. I'll also I'll do the live demo. If at any time I'm using jargon and language that you don't understand, please just unmute yourself and ask in that moment, because it's better to explain that in that point in time and not at the end of a session, because also we might have forgotten by then. Yeah, please, because it's a smaller group this time, please, you don't have to just, if you've got questions as you go, please just unmute and ask. You don't need to be polite and put it in the chat unless you do prefer to do that. So happy to go either way. And as Becky had already said, we'll provide you with the slide deck at the end of the session. One thing that I wanted to quickly cover, and I'm not sure how well versed you are with Google Analytics, but UA is what I'll be showing today, which is called the Universal Analytics, and this has been live for quite a few years for Google. However, Google launched in beta, but also more in the live field, the GA4 more recently, which was also known as App and Web. I'm not going to take you through the GA4. It's a completely different way that you measure and report on data at this point in time. As I said, there's, as you can see in the slide, that there are both positives and negatives about it. But I wouldn't recommend upgrading to GA4 yet, because there's a lot of information that isn't tracked yet. It's also, as I said, a very different way of analysing your website data. And also when you upgrade, you do actually lose, when you upgrade, the UA analytics doesn't continue. And so when you start using the GA4, it will only start recording data from that time that you've activated. So you really need to be prepared in a business sense as well, that you're going to be starting from scratch with your measurements and collating data. However, in saying that though, if you're setting up a brand new account for Google Analytics, there is an option to set up both UA and GA4, and I do recommend you activate it at both of them at the same time. But you can only do that if you're setting up a new account. So hopefully that covers all that. So I just thought I'd just do a little bit of an explanation around data analytics and insights, because a lot of these terms can be sort of bandied around, but people don't necessarily quite understand what each means. So I describe data as the information that's collected that measures the performance of something. So the Google, the website data measures, is information that's collected that measures the performance of the website. Analytics is when you apply analysis to that data. So how you make sense of the data that you see. And then insights are the actions you can take, or what you may call actionable insights. So for example, what would be a good example? Data that shows that you can show that you've got 950 visitors or something like that to your website over the last 7 days. So that's the data. The analytics shows you how many visitors were using a mobile device or a desktop to access your website. However, insights would reveal that visitors using a mobile were 40% more likely to visit what's on section of your website. So this then, to the insight that gives you is to make sure that your what's on section of your website is optimized for mobile. So that's kind of, you know, the transition you can go, the journey you go through for data to analytics to actionable insights. But really everything is about people. Like behind all the numbers that you'll see today, these numbers are describing people. It's about getting an understanding around human behaviour and how people find your website, how they interact with your site. You don't, as I said before, I don't have a degree in data science. You don't need a degree in order to navigate Google Analytics and to get actionable insights from it. However, you just need to have a willingness to explore and investigate and practice. And I do mean practice, because it does come a lot easier the more you use it. And I'm assuming, given that you're all here today, that you're all willing to explore and investigate. So I'm hoping that I make things a little bit easier for you delving into Google Analytics. So what is Google Analytics? Well, it's a free tracking tool that shows you how people get to and use your website. It also tracks blogs, social media, newspaper articles. You know, it is an amazing piece of software, or code, I should say. It measures your website performance. It sees how good your marketing activity is. It's a tool that that enables you to optimize your website so that it is more user-friendly for consumers. It's a tool, as I said, it collects the data, it processes it, and then it creates reports. So it does this through using cookies. And I'm pretty sure when you visit websites these days, you'll see that you have a pop-up window saying that this site uses cookies, and you say accept or not. So you can opt in or out to accept those cookies. So what happens is every time someone visits your website, Google places a bit of code or a cookie into their browser, so they then can, Google can then collect all the data around their activities on your website, and they then process it, and then you can create reports through Google Analytics. So it's kind of like, I don't want to say it, it's kind of almost like spyware. But yeah, so as you know, with the Privacy Act these days, not everyone, you have to actually allow people to opt in or out to accept your cookies. So Google Analytics isn't 100% accurate. It's probably generally about 80% accurate around tracking and measuring activity to and from your website. So that's still pretty good though. Okay, so how to set up an account. So one of the things I do recommend, if you haven't set up an account before, I would suggest that you set up a Gmail address, but a business one. So if your council hasn't got a Gmail address, I would recommend setting up one, because then you can use that to log in to you, your Google Analytics. And it also means that if people are, you know, moving jobs or change, you know, or leave the council, you're not left with trying to, you know, reset up accounts because someone's, you know, hasn't left the password. So having a central Gmail address for your council is really beneficial for this. As I said earlier, you can select both. If you're setting up a new account, I would select both GA4 and UA to set up a new account. I'll go through this in a minute live, but I just wanted to go through a few things. And then you need to embed a tracking code into each page of your website. Now, I don't suggest you do this yourself. Either use your web developer, go to them to do it, or if you've got Tag Manager, which is another Google platform, I would suggest using that to put in the code into your website. So what I'll do now is I'll see whether or not, I'll just stop sharing for a second and see if I can, that's not working, is it? Here we go. I will, okay, let's now, hopefully I can share my screen for, okay, please let me know if you can see the Google Analytics. Yep, excellent. So what I'll show you is I will pretend to set up a new account so you can see how it all happens. So when you're wanting to go in with it, it says, let's start measuring. And here, put in your account name. So with it, I would put it in the name of your council. So I'll just put Test Council here. I would make sure that you do benchmarking because it just comes with a really good way of, you can benchmark yourself against other government websites. Leave the rest, that's all fine, and just press next. And so this is a property view. So again, I would put in the council website. Make sure that you change it all through to Australia and Adelaide time. And of course, Australian dollars. And then the key thing here is the show advanced options. So this is where it talks to you about setting up a universal analytics. And it says here the option is to either create only the universal or UA, but I highly recommend if it's a new one that you're setting up to do both at the same time. And so here you would put in the name of your website. So I'll put that in for now, but you would put your council web address in there. So here I would definitely fill these out because being a local government, I would make sure that you put law and government there so that when you are comparing the activity of your website against other like websites, that you're doing it within the industry. Again, make sure that, you know, your business size. And then in regards to how do you intend to use Google Analytics, because we're not councils aren't generally a commercial website with e-commerce attached to it, I usually would select the first three, because the rest are really to do with e-commerce. So then you just select create. This is about your terms of agreement. So we're in Australia, so please make sure that you accept based on the Australian terms and agreements. So this is, I would then just close this for now. Okay. So as you can see, let's just go back. So I'm in the admin section, which is at the bottom of the screen, this little cog. And the account that I've set up was called Test Council, and it's one account. And here, the property, so this is the property as in the what they mean by property is actually the website. So they consider a website a property. So here, as you can see, because I selected both options, we have the UA and the GA4 options. So the UA is what we'll be working on today, and I'll be showing you how to work, how to use. So here is my UA, and I need to, what I would then recommend is that you set up 3 different views of your website data. And this is just so that you set up a raw, test and a master. So I would create a view, and I'll call it 3, and I'd call raw data view. And this just means that if you make any changes to the other views, it means that you've always got data on your website that has never been touched. So if something goes wrong in one of the other views, you can always go back to this to be able to find out the information you need. So the next one I would call, I do 2, and I'd go test view, so that if you're mucking around with filters or anything that you really just want to play with that could alter how the data is recorded, then I would do it in that view to start with. And the final view that I would create is the master view. And this is the view that I'll be showing you how to use today, because this is where you would apply some certain filters so that you're actually seeing your real view. So the different views here, we've got 3, the raw data, test and master. So just make sure that you're on the master. And then I would go into view settings just to make sure everything is right. And for some reason it hasn't used Aussie dollars. And this is where I would turn on site search settings. Because Google Analytics will only, okay, so how a website works, when you go on your council homepage, you'll normally see your search bar quite prominent. And when people put in terms in there, the search program that's installed onto your computer on your website will then trawl your website and then bring out the results that's hopefully relevant to what people are searching for. Because that's technically not a web page and it's not necessarily a content, you need to actually teach Google Analytics what to look for when people are searching. So what I mean by that is I'll put site search on, and it says here that you need to find what the query parameter is. And now to do that, and I'm hoping, can you see when I change screens? Can you see a Google search there? Yes, okay. So I will just go into LGA and show what their search engine does when you use it. So up here they've got search, and we'll just do training and press enter. And up in the search bar here, in the back, because this is the word that we search for, training, and before it's got the equal sign, oops. So what Google was asking in regards to the parameter was whether or not prior to the equal sign, whether or not it uses the word query or has the letter Q. So as we can see for here, that's how you can figure out. So if you go onto your website, use the search engine, you can figure out what the parameter is. And so what we can do here is we can go query, and then it knows what to do. And then you press save. So this, as soon as you press save, then Google Analytics will start recording what people are searching for, the terms people are using. So that enables you to then start reporting on or looking into what keywords people are using to search on your website. Alternatively, depending on what search engine program has been plugged into your website, sometimes you can get that information from that program, but you'd have to ask your web developer as to, you know, how to access that information. So there's two more things I want to show you in order to set up. One is filters. So I highly recommend setting up a filter that excludes internal traffic. And so what I mean by that is it excludes any traffic relating to anyone that's working within the council using your website, because your website's probably used by your marketing and comms team, it'd be used by your customer service team, it would be used by your library services. You know, the website's used by a lot of people internally, but that doesn't necessarily give you the right view about, or doesn't give you the right information around who's actually visiting and using your website. So you do want to exclude that internal traffic. So the way to do that is you go into filters and you go add filter. And here we would do, I would call it internal traffic, so I know exactly what the filter relates to. And it's a predefined filter term because we're going to exclude that traffic, and select source, and you're excluding traffic from the IP address. Now, to find out what your IP address is, make sure that you are logged into a computer at your council. And all you do is you go to Google and go what is my IP? And it will tell you. So then you just copy and paste. Actually, I'll just copy and then you paste it here. And then select, and it says that it equal to. We don't want to do begins or contains. Because an IP address is basically your computer network at your council. So everyone who's logged into each computer that's logged into the council server all have the same IP address. So we just press save now, and that will start running straight away. The final thing I want to show you here is about setting up goals. Now, you might go, well, why do we want to set up goals? Because we're not, you know, an e-commerce or commercial website. Now, this is something to discuss as a marketing comms or point of view, or even just discuss with management around what do you think success looks like for your website. So some of the things that I would, you know, consider is maybe the number of pages people will view each time they go to your website, or how much time they spend on your website, or they've completed an action like downloaded a PDF or something like that. So yeah, this is a discussion you need to have as a you know, either a marketing communications team or as a senior management in council around what they see is what does success look like for your website. So I would, I think one of the ones that we used to use at City of Adelaide was the number of pages viewed at any given visit. So I would suggest, you know, setting it at 2 or 3. So every time someone goes to your website and they view 2 or 3 pages, it's considered that you've actually converted and you've achieved a goal. So you can see whether or not you know, you're improving. In order to set up a goal such as the pages viewed, you need to actually go down to the custom button here, and you go continue, and I would go pages viewed. And then select pages or screens per session and press continue. And then I would, if you're just starting out and you're really wanting just to see how things are going, just start at 2. You can always change goals later on if you know, hopefully, you know, blowing that out the park. You can add a monetary value, but I would suggest not doing it because it's just too hard. I wouldn't even begin to know where to start how to value monetary. You know, people visiting 2 pages or more, and then you just press save. Okay, and you can also see that you can turn it off at any time by just clicking that button there. Okay, so that is quite quickly how to set up a new account, a new property, which is your website, and the 3 different views. And then in the master view, which is what you'll use when looking into data, is where you set your goals and your filters to make sure that you're getting the most out of the information that's being recorded. So I think what I'll do, I'll flick back to my presentation. So I'll just stop sharing for a second. Present, here we go. Okay. Did anyone have any questions relating to that while I'm just changing screens? No? Okay, so jumping back to the presentation. Now I just thought I'd just go through some of the terminology that's used. So the key thing to know and understand with Google Analytics is there's 2 key terms. One is dimensions and the other one is metrics. So metrics is basically, as you can see here, like a unit of information that tells you how an aspect of your website is performing. And a dimension is criteria that metrics are measured against, how the data is sort of categorised. So basically the metrics are the quantitative measures of data and the dimensions are the category labels. When I show you the dashboards, you'll see that the metrics are usually in the columns and the dimensions are the rows. I will go through some of these metrics now, so hopefully you can view this okay. So a page view, as it says here, a page being loaded on your website and viewed by a user is a page view. So what I mean by that is where if someone visits your home page and then the library services page and then the their rates page, that's considered 3 page views because someone has visited 3 different pages on your website. A session is a person interacting with your website. Sorry, there's a bit of a spelling error there. With your website. So,
it's me, Kate.
Yeah.
Sorry, could you please maximise the presentation on your screen?
Okay. Let's try that again because I thought I was share screen. Is that better?
That's done it, thank you.
Okay, so I'll go back to that one just in case you didn't cover that. So the page view is when someone visits 3 different pages on your individual pages on your website. So your home page followed by library services followed by your rates equals 3 page views. So sessions is a person interacting with your website. So as I said in the previous slide, if someone visited, the 3 pages, so the home page, library and rates, within 30 minutes, that's considered a session. So if someone had gone to those 3 pages and then, you know, life stepped in and you know, had to go and answer, you know, make a phone call and make a cup of tea or put some washing on or whatever, and then they came back to your website and then visited another page, but 30 minutes or more had passed, that's considered another separate session. So that person, even though they had visited your website 4 times, or visited 4 pages on your website in a day, because the first lot of pages were less than 30 minutes and then they got called away, Google timed out and it stopped recording their activity on the website. So therefore, when they came back to your website 45 minutes later, that's considered a separate session. So that user, that person, had then had 2 sessions on your website in that morning. So a user is a person counted once in the selected date range. So a user, what I mean by selected date range, is that when you go into Google, you can set it at a week's view, a 2-week view. So if a person had visited the website and had 4 different sessions over a 2-week period, that person is still counted as a user, as one user. Now, that's only, I'll leave it at that for now, and I can explain some of the issues around that later on. But everyone okay with those terms?
Kate, we've just had a question pop up in the chat from Kylie saying, what's a good time to set a session at if different to 35 minutes?
A session is continual use of your website. However, if the person stops using the website but leaves the browser up and active and then goes off, and there's 30 minutes or more between them coming back, that's a separate session. So Google sets that timeout at 30 minutes. Does that answer the question? I'm sorry, I can't see the chat for some reason. Where is it all gone?
Okay, it might be easier talking. I thought that you could set your own time. I think 30 minutes is the default, but you can set a different time for it to max out at.
Oh, yeah.
Is that still correct?
Yeah, you can still do that. You can do that. So, for example, you wanting to be only 15 minutes, you can go through the admin section of Google Analytics and set it in there.
So is 35 minutes a good time to keep it at if they've defaulted?
The 30 minutes is fine, but if you feel that the content of the page means that people are going to be on there for 30 minutes and not interacting with it, and so you feel like that you're missing out on getting accurate data. So, for example, if you, for some reason, had a blog on your website that took people 35 minutes to read, you would probably consider changing the timeout to 40 minutes so that you're accurately recording people's session activity in Google Analytics. However, council websites, more often than not, people will only be on a page for a minute, minute and a half, two at the most. So a timeout of 30 minutes is fine. I wouldn't bother changing it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now I found the chat thing and I've got it up. So yes, as you can see, the overall view, it all flows with the page views flow into the sessions to a user. So when you're looking at user data, you can see with a user how many sessions they've had, how many page views they've had, and so forth. So that's how Google Analytics delves into the data and records it for you. Now, what I'm going to do now is, again, see if I can get back into Google Analytics. let's get into here. So now I'm just going to show you, I'm going to go into, let's see if I can share screen. Okay. So hopefully you can see Google Analytics. So once you've set up the account, is that big enough for everyone? Is that full screen or not? Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect.
That's fine. Okay, so when you have set up the account and you come in, you'll go into the home you'll see the home view. So what I'm showing you here now is actually a demo account that Google sets up that anyone can get access to. So this will show both live data, as in active users, as well as historic information. So when people talk about Google Analytics and their standardized reports, what they mean by standardized reports are these reports down the left-hand side. So real-time, audience, acquisition, behavior, and conversions. So I'm going to go through these relatively quickly because I've just realized I've got to keep a track of time. Yeah, we're all right. So what we've got here is real time. So this is real time as in live. So you'll see live data around the website. You'll see that there's 30 active users on the website at this point in time. 68% of them are using the desktop and 32% are using their mobile. You can see what pages they're on and how many percentage of users, active users. So you could also see from what country they come from, the users. Look, I always saw this as a nice to have. You know, sometimes it's good to see, especially peak traffic to your website would probably be, you know, morning and afternoon. You know, jumping in and seeing what it's like at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock would probably be quite good. This is just, I see as something is a nice to have. I think, yeah, unless the other option is to also use it. So if you do live streaming of your council meetings, it's also good to see what people can be doing two things at once, also trawling your website at the same time. So sometimes it's good to have a sneak peek at what people are doing if there is a certain event or activity you know that could be affecting traffic to your website. So audience, as it says, this is these reports here provide you with information around the characteristics of who is accessing your websites, the demographics, the types of devices people are using to access your website, their interests. So it's really getting understanding who is visiting your website over a period of time. Acquisition is about tracking and understanding how people arrive to your website. So where are they coming from? So is it from search engines? Is it from social media? If it's from other websites. Behavior is understanding how people are behaving in your website. So, you know, how do they, what pages are they viewing? How do they arrive into your website? How do they exit from your website and those sort of things? And then conversions is more, this is where we've set up a goal previously, but this is also really good for when, if you are doing, if you've set up more serious goals as well as tracking any e-commerce activity. So I won't be covering conversions today, but I'll go back up to audience and I'll delve into that a little bit further. So the first view that you'll see under audience is overview. So this is your standard view of a report in most of Google Analytics. So up here, it will have your title. It will show that you're viewing data for all your users, and then but that would also include the filter of stopping internal traffic would be considered all users. And then you'll see up the top here, we've got save, export, share, and insights. You can, because this is an interactive report, you can make changes to it and save it. You can export it, and I'll show you later what that looks like, because it's basically that in a PDF format, so it's very blue and green, Google colours, or you can share it. So as I mentioned before around you can set the view of the data that you're delving into. So this is up here. You can set your view. So you can set it for, you want to look at it for the last month, and it will change your view so you can see it, the activity for your website for the last month. You can also compare it. So if you've been tracking the data on your website for a while, you can compare it to the previous period, or you can do the previous year. And then it will then show you, it will overlay that data there for you. So you can see, and then it will show you the data down here based on the variation and comparing the two. So what I'll do, just to make it easier, I'll get rid of the compare to for now and just look at the last month's data. So this shows you the users. So that, again, this is the number of users on any given day over the last month. So in the last month, there were 63,000 users to the website. In the last month, there was 58,000 new users to the website. So what that shows you is what this pie graph shows you as well, is that they have a lot of new visitors to the website, but they still have a percentage that are returning. So that's the difference between, if you subtract new users from users, that would be your number of returning visitors to your website. From a council point of view, I would hope that you'd have 50-50 in a way. You would want a lot of returning visitors, because you want your website to be relevant to not just your constituents, but people outside your council area. So if you have a lot of new visitors and very little returning visitors, I'd be looking into the data around that to find out, you know, why that's the case. It's still good to have a lot of new visitors, but you still want people to keep going back. Because I suggest that if you've got a low returning visitor rate, you've got a lot of phone calls coming into your call centre, because people are trying to find the information else in another way. This, in the last month, they've got the sessions here. So the 79,000 sessions happened. And within those 79,000 sessions, there were 336,000 page views. So this then lets you know that the number of pages per session people are viewing is 4.2 pages per session. So I would hope also from your council point of view that there would be on average 2 to 3 pages per session, I would hope. So that's another thing to look at. Average session duration, so that's there for the last month, the average session duration is 2 minutes and 48 seconds. This will vary depending on why people are coming to your website. You know, so if they're coming to, for example, you know, pay bills, more often than not, people have to click on a link to pay their rates, and they're taken away from their website, which means the session duration, they might have been only on the website for 30 seconds. So again, there's no best practice or session duration to aim for. It really just depends on what people are doing on your website. So you can, the session duration works better if you're looking at sort of the behaviour further down. And now the bounce rate. You know, a lot of people use that in reporting, bounce rate. I mean, I suppose to explain a bounce rate, so a bounce occurs when someone visits your website and then leaves without interacting any further with your site. So it basically, the bounce rate shows you the percentage of visitors who bounce off your site. So sometimes it can be a high bounce rate, like at 80%, is quite a very, very high bounce rate. This could indicate that the information that you've got on your site isn't relevant and they're not finding what they need. It could mean that their search terms they used on Google and how they found your site meant they didn't marry up with the expectations, so they left really quickly. The other thing to be aware of, the bounce rate might be high because of what they're viewing. So as I said before, if someone's coming to use your library catalogue or coming in to pay your rates, they'll come to a page, then click on the link to say pay rates, and then that link takes people away from your website. So that's considered a bounce. So the bounce rate needs to be looked at in the context of the page, which means I would be looking at the bounce rate further down in behaviour, because then you can then see the types of pages people are viewing. Because what we're doing here, this is the audience view. So this is giving you the average or the data around all of your audience, not necessarily your content that people are viewing on your webpage. Also in the overview here, you can see language, country, city. From a council point of view, this information may not be granular enough because it does tend to do city and not regional cities. So it'd be skewed a lot depending, I'd take it with a grain of salt, some of that granular information. Browser's actually really good from finding out what browser people are using your web to access your website, because it would just make sure that from a web development point of view, making sure that your website is optimized to be able to be viewed on those browsers. So for example, if for some reason Opera, which is a very European browser, if that happened to be quite high and your website's not optimized for Opera, it'll be giving customers a really bad customer experience on your website, because things would be broken, or they wouldn't be able to view things very well, and they'll just get ticked off and then ring your call center. And again, you can see it down, they even go down to mobile. So you'll see that Android and Apple are quite high for this website. So that's sort of the overview. Summary. What you can do is you can get down into demographics. So again, there's the overview of the demographics of the website here, which gives you just the key male-female breakdown. But to get the more granular into it, you go into age, and then you'll see like a typical layout of more granular information that you get with Google Analytics. So this one is just around age. And so remember earlier on I talked about the different terms. There's dimensions and there's metrics. So the metrics are the things that are in the columns. So here's the users, new users and sessions. So this is the data that is collected. And the dimension is the category or label. So in this sense, it's an age. So the dimension is 25 to 34 years. So as you can go, that's your main user group for this website, is 25 to 34-year-olds. So from a council point of view, you might find that it's a bit more skewed in the older demographic, and sort of you might find the 45 to 55 a bit higher. This is also a good way to track to see, how, if you are attracting the younger demographic to your website. It shows you the number of new users and the like. So this is kind of the tabulation that you see on any standard report as you delve into the granular information. So if we go into gender, it's exactly the same. It will just go male and female and show you the same all the way across. I'll just go back to age though. You can change the row. So if the results came back and there's quite a few results, you can actually change it to view to 50 so that you don't have to change pages. Up here, you've the default view is to have the table data, but you can actually click through them and go, okay, I actually do want the pie graph because I'm more visual. So depending if you're a data person or a visual person, sometimes it's better off to use these views here. And then you can say, show the same information as a bar graph. And then here you can also do some benchmarking here. So this is comparing the average to the whole site, but you might want to look at the age range and compare it to the new users to the site. So yeah, just have a bit of fun and play around going through them all to see what best works for you. If you really are a data nerd, you can use pivot tables at the end. These dimensions are usually clickable, so you can go in and go further in. At the moment, it will take you further down the demographic data. So hang on, just to go back to all. It will always delve, when you click on here, it will delve into what else is available in that dimension. So because it's in the demographic, it will go down into gender. So out of that age group, 25 to 34-year-old age group, it's now filtered all the data on that page to reflect just that age group. So you can see that the males in that age group is more, visit the website more. Other things you can do if you just go, well, age is great, but I really would like, I'd like to show it all on one page. You can add a secondary dimension. So instead of having to click through and find out what the male and female ratio is for that age group, you can actually go in here and click second dimension and go gender. Oop, if my keyboard works. Nope, it does. And you can click on gender. And then it will show you, it'll break it down even further to say, okay, number one users are males in 25 to 35-year-old group, followed by males 18 to 24 years, and so forth. So you can play around. You know, you're not going to break anything. This is a good thing about, like, your data is stored behind the scenes there. This is a way of just bringing your data into an analysis format. So just muck around with adding extra dimensions, because you're not going to break it. So if you do accidentally put something in there that's not relevant, it will just come out as an error. So, you know, as I say, just play around with it to find until you more understand what you can do with it, but also to find out whether or not it's relevant to view. Interests. Now, I take this this page with a very, very big grain of salt, because interests is basically what Google uses. It's the information they get by stripping and trawling any website or account that you've set up using your Gmail account, your Google address. So it's kind of, you know, it may only be measuring 5% of your overall users to your website. And they do trawl this information, I think, quite suspectly. And so it might give you some insight that, okay, well, from a council point of view, we've got a lot of people who are into, you know, media and entertainment and movie lovers. Maybe we should make sure that, you know, the cinema in the park is more prominent on your web page or website or something like that. But as I said, I would take this with a grain of salt in regards to this. It's just nice to know. Again, you can go through all the demographics around location. Here you've got technology is around your browser, your mobiles, whether or not what devices they're using and the like. Behaviour is a very good one to go into, because then you can delve more into the new versus returning. So as I said before, if you've got a high rate of new but not a very low rate of returning, you can actually start cutting and splicing and trying to understand, you know, so if we wanted to find out if there's an age, not gonna work that, yeah, an age difference with the new versus the returning, and you can keep splicing it through until you've got some interesting insights that you can figure out for the behaviour. So we've got half hour left, so I'm going to go through some of the other reports. Was there any questions around audience that anyone had? Because I seem to have lost my chat bar again.
Kate, I think I've broken my Google Analytics.
And why
I feel so dumb having to ask you this, but because we had already got Google Analytics, I don't think I'd set it up properly. I was trying to follow you and you were saying this is how you set it up. I think I've broken it because it's saying that it's 0% for the last 90 days.
Yes, because if you've changed your view data here, if you're looking at your master view now, it's only started recording from this point in time.
Okay, right.
Which is why having the raw data view, which you never changed, should have all your historic information.
Okay, so can you just, sorry, I'm sorry for everybody else, can I just ask how can I get that back then? How can I see?
So if you see at the top of my screen here, it says one master view.
Yes, yeah.
So if you click on that, you should have a pop-up window, which I don't know if you can see.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So hopefully you've kept your raw data as it is, and you can go back to your raw data view.
Okay, so sorry, I'm trying to look at both screens here. So I'm back, I've pressed that button, and what do I need to press again? Sorry. This is so tricky. I'm just on a laptop, so I'm trying to go from your screen back to my screen. Sorry. So
if you've got a window that's popped up saying master view, test view, and raw data view.
Master view. It has. Oh, do you know? It doesn't matter. It's fine. I'll just work it out later on. It's okay.
Yeah, because I'm not sure if you can see my screen. So when you click the master view button up there, it then comes up with options here and the views. You've got your different views. So if you go back to your original data, it should be, you just click on that, and then that should load up your raw data view, which should have all your historic information.
Yeah, it's not letting me do it, but it's fine. I'll work it out later on.
Okay. Otherwise, the other option is that we can stay online after this, and I can see if I can help you.
Okay, right. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so acquisition. So again, just a reminder, acquisition is around understanding how people get to your website. So this is the overview page. And again, just checking I'm using for the last month. So this shows the top where people are coming from. So direct means someone has actually typed in your email address, web address, and come directly to your website. Display means there's been you've got some sort of display ad on another website and someone's clicked on that. Paid search is when you've done some maybe some Google ads, AdWords. So you've got some ads on Google search results pages. Organic search means that people have been searching for, maybe what's on in Port Pirie, and the search results come up, and then they've clicked on that, and that's what its organic search means. It means that they haven't clicked on an advert, they've actually clicked on a search results to get to your site. And referral means as with a lot of councils, your council address, web address will be on multiple other websites. And when someone clicks on that, so maybe they are on the, SA Water website or something, and then they wanted to come to your council area, and there was your web address on there, and they've clicked on that and come to your website, that's called a referral. So on here, we have all traffic. So we have channels, source, medium, and referrals. I'm just going to go into source medium because that's usually the most relevant here. So again, the standard report view happens here. And again, we've gone for the last month. So source medium is, the source is how they came to your, source tells you the, where they saw the message. So that might mean, you know, it would have been on Google, it might have been, or Google here, it might be another web, what do you call, browser, like Baidu here. And then the medium, which is after the dash, is how the message was communicated. So what I mean by how was it organic? So it was so that the source was Google search and the medium was organic. So that means that it was a non-paid for search results on Google. Google CPC. CPC means cost per click. So that actually means that you have some ads that are running on Google. And so 247 people clicked on that ad and came to the website. So this actually this is actually a good view to find out how people are getting to, how and from where people are getting to your website. So whether or not it's organic, searching on whatever search engine, or if you've got some advertising, paid ads on social media, so like through Facebook, that will come up where they've got, let's just change this to 50. I don't know if they've got any here for social media. No, they don't. So mail.google.com referral means that it could be that they had an email from your council and there was a website link at the bottom or the footer of your email, and that would be captured here as a referral. So again, you can just cut and dice it as you see fit. You can, if you go into Google Organic and delve in further, it doesn't actually tell you much. You need to actually splice and dice because Google doesn't track. Google used to track the terms people used in the search engines, and you'd be able to report on it in Google Analytics. You can't now. So channels just provide you with the top level view. So before, Source Medium gave you the breakdown. So it gave you, you know, the where they were coming from and then how they got your message. Whereas this gives you a summary, and that's what they mean by channel. So direct just means people direct came to your website. And if you click through, it will then break down and find out where they've landed. So when they've come directly to the website, most people have come through to the home page. Back. Okay, I've got 20 minutes. So I will, Google Ads is when you're setting up your, you need to set up your Google Ads account, and then you can track your Google ad campaigns through there. And Search Console. If you haven't got Google Search Console set up for your website, I highly recommend you do. It's free to set up. And what Search Console, Google Search Console does, it trawls your website and looks for things like broken links, spelling mistakes, pages that are not optimized and things like that. So it's kind of a really good one-stop shop to go to find out if there's any little annoying errors on your website that can be easily fixed. And because the Google is trawling your website quite in minute detail, they can also track some other information which can then be incorporated into your Google Analytics. Now, moving on to behaviour. So this is what a lot of people really want to get into. So this is around understanding how people are using your website. So once they've arrived on your website, you can get more understanding of how they're navigating and what pages they're viewing and the like. So with this overview page, you can, when it's gone here, page, it's showing you the most popular pages, so page views of the website, but by its URL. So your this will be whatever council/home, meaning your home page. So that's the actual URL address. You've also got page title. So sometimes it's easier to use this view because every single page on your website will have a title, whether or not it's called What's On or Library Services or I don't know, online services or whatever it is, waste and recycling. Sometimes it's easier to actually view what the most popular pages are based on page title. Because for a non-website person or someone who's not working on the website, you'd probably understand the page name better. Now, this is the site search. So remember when I was showing you how to set up the account and activated the site search using the query parameter for this was query. This is where the information comes in here. So if this has been activated for the last month, you may see a whole range of terms here. So you might see rates, rubbish, what's on, or whatever terms people are using in the search search on your website will show up here. Event category depends on if you've set up an event, and what I mean by that is you can, if you've got certain videos or documents on the website that you want to track how many people are viewing or downloading, you have to set up an event to do that, to track that. And I'm not going to show you how to do that on this session because that's more of an advanced session to go into that. Behaviour flow is just a weird and wonderful way of visually seeing how people and where people are going next. I find this very confusing to use, so I prefer to go straight into the site content and go into the all pages and start understanding this. So this gives you more detail from the summary view about the pages. So you can see here that there's 711 pages. So you can actually view all of them. If you don't like using the URL, just change the dimension up the top here, as you see, to page title, and makes it easier to view. So this shows you that the home page is the most viewed. However, sometimes what you want to find out is, even though the homepage is the most viewed, you might want to find out how people are, what's the most popular, what they call landing page. And landing page is basically the first page that people view when they arrive to your website. So it might be that it's not your homepage. It could be your library services because it's, the links through from the OneCard library network. It could be your What's On section of your website might be the most popular landing page. And finding out, this also means it shows what people are looking for. It's a good way of understanding, why they're coming to your website in the first place. This is also around, you can see whether or not there's a bounce rate that's really high. So here, this is a 91% bounce rate. So it might mean that the name on this page is incorrect, the content doesn't quite meet expectations. So I would, look at and view the content of that page to see, if there is any understanding around why there's such a high bounce rate, and if there shouldn't be, look at how to tweak that page. Exit page is where you can find out where people are leaving your website. So it might be that you will find those pages on your website that lead people off to other websites. So like paying you any online payments, your library catalogue, maybe your agenda and minutes section of your council meetings. They may feature quite high here because people naturally exit the your website from there. So those are there. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. You can create your own dashboards up here, custom reports, and save them. I find when you do that, it doesn't necessarily, I find Google Analytics itself quite cumbersome to do that sort of thing. I personally use a thing called Data Studio. It's free connection. Again, it's a Google product. You can connect it to Google Analytics. And you basically just go in and you set up widgets. So these are all different widgets that you can enter in, and you can add pages and you can add notes, because that's one of the things that the dashboard on Google Analytics doesn't allow. It doesn't allow you to write notes. So sometimes when you get given, if you share data around your website, it actually helps to have notes so people can understand, because they may have never heard of the terminology used in Google. So you might want to talk about why Facebook is so high here. You might put a call out note saying, we've currently got, through this period, we had 2 ad campaigns running on Facebook, which is why these are quite high, and that sort of thing. So I'm not, as I said, we've only got about 10 minutes left of the session, so I'm not going to go through how to set up a Data Studio dashboard in this session. However, if you are interested, I can show, you might want to just log that with Sama, and potentially if we get enough interest, we could set that up as a separate session. What I might do now is go through really quickly some information around reporting. Where are we? Can people see that? I'm not sure if I actually stayed in. Can people see that screen? The government sites are a little different. Yep. Because we haven't got that much left time. I just thought I'd talk about what to report on, what should you be measuring. Look, there's no key thing to be measuring, because it really depends on who your audience is. So if your audience is senior management, they might just want what I call the vanity metrics, which is around, they just want to see how many people are visiting the website. Has there been growth in the people visiting? What the most popular pages are? Those sort of things is what senior management team might, or your counsellors might want to see. However, some of the your internal customers within council, it might be you've been running a campaign on increasing awareness of the community programs and events that the council puts on. So your clients in community might want a report that just specifically looks at their pages and who visits their pages. So you might want to filter down the customer data down to, you know, specifically the pages that are relevant to that customer. From a marketing communications point of view, you might be wanting to report on other things, such as, you know, how people are finding the website. And if it ends up being organic is quite high, that means you must be doing, you know, some really great things. If organic's really low, then it might be something to look at in terms of how the website's structured and the contents displayed. So yeah, I can't just say, here you go, here's a report that you should be, all the metrics that you should be measuring, because it really does depend on who you're reporting to. Because it might be a manager that wants to put forward a business case around upgrading the website, for example, and they would require a whole different lot of data compared to, say, someone who's running a campaign. So yeah, I wish I had a one size fits all report, but it really does depend on who you're presenting the information to. Now, that was a lot, and I think I've been talking for an hour and a half straight. Has anyone got any questions relating to any of that? Did you find it helpful, or did you find it overwhelming?
Kate, we've got a couple in the chat.
Yeah.
Does demographic info need to be enabled before it is collected? That was from Sarah. Her microphone's not working.
Oh, okay, sorry. No, it is automatically trawled to that degree. So you're fine. It automatically comes through. It's a set default.
Awesome. Sarah, did you just want to give us a thumbs up in the reactions so we know that that's answered your question?
No, well, Sarah's just come back to say that there is no data in there. I would need to have a look at how it was set up, because if you is it sorry, Sarah, is that a have you just set it up? No. Okay, that means there's, okay, I'll have to take that offline with you, I think. Is that okay? Were there any other questions? No? Well, what I might do, because the next session is going to start, I assume, in 6 minutes, maybe make it 10, because I know that I'm quite parched and I need a drink, and then I can, I think, oh, hang on. Jane, under behaviour flow, site content, I've collected, I select all pages. My number 2 on the list is an account management page. Oh, this, with those error 404s, this is when it's good to have the Google search console set up, because you'll be able to identify through Google Search Console what pages or URLs are bringing up the 404 error. That is definitely a back-end thing that you need to set up. Okay, so what I might do is say, let's at 11:05 come back. Is everyone all right with that bit of a break? Because I think we all need a bit of a break.
Yeah, sounds good.
And Sarah, I will try and figure out a solution for you. Sarah, if you're there, let me know, because I think I might have a solution for you.
Sorry, Kate, can you hear me? Hello, it's Jane.
Oh, hi, Jane. I was just typing. I was just the other way to do it, to find that out, would be to set up a what they call a trigger in Tag Manager. Do you know about Tag Manager and all
No.
that? Yeah, that would be. I'd get some help with that and find out if Tag Managers. I'm hoping Tag Managers used on your website, because it makes managing code and things quite easy. You can set up a trigger so that every time a 404 comes about, it can let you know where it is. It sets up a report so you can find out.
Because it's coming up, I've looked at the site content all pages report and I clicked on page title. So for page title, it says account management. I'm wondering whether it is that login issue that Google's picking up something where they're searching and it's a page that requires a login.
Yeah, because if a page requires a login, the Google might be, depending what other content is on that page before you log in, to log in, it's picking that up. I wouldn't have thought that was a 404 though.
So the only way I know it's
a 404 means the page doesn't exist.
Okay.
So
I'm saying 404 because I've clicked on in that table under site content all pages. It gives me a little arrow box and I clicked on that and it opened it. So I'm assuming that's right to do. Yeah, but I do need to get to the bottom of it because it's a good thing you've brought up, because it's 28 people in the last month who've come from Google and hit this page. Okay.
No, that requires a bit of, because if it ends up being a login page, I'm not sure why Google is.
Yeah, it should just send you directly to the login page.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for your help so far. It's good.
That's all right. Now, is everyone back? A couple of people, 2. Okay, now let's see if I can, okay, I might just do it this way. Okay, so SEO, not everyone may come back because not everyone may be interested in SEO, but we're interested in the first session. So okay, present, here we go. Oh, no, hang on, sharing screen. Let's see if I can do it this way. Microsoft presentation. Oh, I've lost everyone. Can you see that? Is that big for you? Is it maximised? It is? Good. I'm not sure if I like this 2-screen thing. I think it was much easier on 1 screen. Okay, so I'm going to talk about SEO, so search engine optimization. I'll cover briefly why, oh, that's better, why we should focus on optimizing for Google, how to make sure that how to optimize for Google search, and some tools and resources that you can use in order to help. Now, this will be death by slide, and I apologise for this beforehand, because there's nothing sort of too live that I can show you. So yeah, just bear with me. There are quite a few slides to get through. In the handout that was shared with you that had all the glossary for the Google Analytics terms, at the back end of that, the last page, is actually a checklist for SEO. So that's what, if you end up having to leave or your connection goes, that checklist is basically what I'm going to go through today now. Okay, no, that's not going to work. No, why can't I go to the next page? Here we go. So what is search? So search is what we call micro moments. So where people are seeking information to satisfy a need at any point in time. So, you know, when you go to Google, if you think about your own search, your search behaviour, you know, you'll go to Google because you want to know something, or you want to go somewhere and you want to learn more about where you're going to go, or you want to do something. So things like you want to learn how to cook Maharaja pie. Don't know why that came in my head. Or I want to buy. So these are what we call micro moments. So satisfying an information need at any point in time is what we call a micro moment. Sorry, something's just marked up on my screen. I'm just going to try and I don't know how to move you. I don't know if that's going to work or not. No. Sorry. I'm just going to have to stop sharing for a second because I have marked up something quite badly there. Escape. Does that work? Uh-oh. Sorry, bear with me one moment. Technical glitch. I'm just going to go and share the screen with this. Share the screen. Okay, now I think I'm back on the road. Okay, sorry about that. So, so what is SEO? So SEO, search engine optimization. It's basically just making sure that your website features higher in the search results when a relevant topic is being searched for in Google or Yahoo or whatever search engine people are using it. And it's making sure it's organic results. So it's making sure your website features higher up, is ranked higher, and it, you know, the results are in the top, you know, 1 or 2, maybe even the top 5 results on the search engine results page, that you don't have to pay for it. So search engine optimization is not about advertising. It's about making your website more visible, more relevant to consumers, making sure that, you know, understanding, making sure the website is more relevant to people's micro moments, and making sure that you're in the top, at least top 10. Because if you also think about how you search, you know, when was the last time, you know, when was the last time you clicked on page 2 of search results for Google? So it really is about making sure you're in what we call the prime real estate of the first page results, especially for Google.
Kate, you've got your notes screen shared with us rather than just the presentation. I don't know if that's intentional.
No, I can't understand this whole screen thing. understand. Is that working now?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so why optimize for Google? So optimizing for Google, this is, even though it says stat count for 2019, it was actually updated for last year. But as you can see, the countries around the world, that Google, you know, is quite high on the results. And on average is around 90% on average. I mean, some countries are different, like Russia and China, for example, because Google don't really feature in China. But for Australia, it's 95% of the market of consumers use Google, which is why I recommend, and why most people recommend, that when you're optimizing your website, that you are optimizing it for Google, because majority of the searches that, or majority people use that as their way of finding and searching for information, and therefore how they find your and arrive from your website. Some stats around searches. I mean, as I said before, I really love data and information, but it just kind of blows my mind that there's 70,000 searches done every second. It's quite huge. You just think about 5.4 billion searches are done online every day. On average, you know, we conduct around 3 to 4 searches every day. Not, you know, we use the term, let's just Google it. It's a new term, you know, part of our everyday vernacular. You know, we tend to go to Google, even if we might know what the web address is for a website, because when we open up a browser, it might be defaulted to Google search. So as a default, people tend to search for websites even through the Google search, even if they may already know what the web address is. So how does Google work? Google crawls, indexes and ranks as a minimum. It sends out bots and spiders and all sorts of things to crawl websites, and it does it through code or the back end of your website. It starts with the URL, it finds the URL and then arrives at your website and then starts crawling the content of that page, and then uses a variety of links that are on that page to start finding other pages within your website. So it crawls horizontally, or vertically from top to bottom. Yeah, it's not horizontally, vertically from top to bottom. And because it crawls from top to bottom, it really does pay to make sure that the most important and relevant information for that page is at the top of the page. Not only just make it easy for customers to find, but it's also about how Google trawls your page, because it doesn't necessarily go all the way to the bottom. When it's crawling a page, it analyzes not only the words that you can see on a page, it also analyzes the images. And how it analyzes the images is that every image has its own file name, as well as a caption, an alt tag attached to it. And those words are also trawled and recorded or crawled by Google. And what I mean by indexing is that Google will, I don't know what the average is now. It used to be every 2 weeks. It would, on average, crawl a website. So that any changes that you've made to the website would be identified and stored in a database. And so it stores it in a database so they can easily, so Google can easily retrieve that information for when people do search, does Google searches. So when Google stores your information, your website's information, it then ranks it. And it's a very complicated ranking system. There's something like 200 plus ranking criteria that that Google uses, and it's basically an algorithm that they tweak all the time. And then as Google applies that to your website, it assigns your website with a relevancy score. And this is what determines the results on a Google search results page. So this is why Google's so important to optimize for. And as I said, Google's always tweaking its algorithms, which means that it's an ongoing process to improve for your SEO. As the next web slide shows, SEO is actually a marathon. It's not a quick fix thing. It's a ongoing process that you need to do to your website, and it will be done on a daily basis, and it will never ever stop. So I will now go through. Oh yeah, so why should councils do SEO? You know, we all know that you don't just build a website and people will come. You also do, as a council, you do a lot more than rates, rubbish and roads. So you want people to come to your website looking for information around, you know, what's on in your area, what programs and activities are going on in your community centres and libraries, you know, maybe the latest dog parks or something that have opened, or, you know, there's a whole lot of other content on your website that you really want to get in front of people's faces. Or in front of their eyes. And to do that, making sure that your website's relevant and features prominently on Google search results means that hopefully when people are trying to go what's on in, you know, Renmark this weekend, your what's on section of your website actually shows prominently for that micro moment for that person. So what exactly is SEO? As I said before, it's a process that you go through. There's a whole list of activities, which is basically the checklist I'm going to go through now. So there's the keyword search, research, URL structure, meta, title and description, H1, H2. Look, this kind of sounds a little bit scary and it's a whole nother language. But it really isn't. It's just a whole lot of housekeeping that needs to be done. So some basic housekeeping that you can do straight off the bat is make sure that your council, which is classified as a business, has been claimed. So all you need to do is click on that URL and type in your council and make sure that your business has been claimed by someone within council. The other thing is to find out if Google has indexed your website, which is quite easy to do. You put site, colon, and then your web address, and then you'll see that for the Mount Barker search that it did, that has been trawled and there was 1,900 results. Another thing is around a site map. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with your website, that usually at the footer of your web page, especially on your home page, is usually a link that says site map. So this is really quite important. So hopefully your website has one, and it has a whole series. It'll be a very long page, because it will list all the pages on your website and links to them. That's what, as I said, that when Google indexes or crawls your website, it uses links to navigate from page to page to page. That helps. Another thing to make sure is if you've got Google Search Console connected to your website, make sure your sitemap file is loaded into that as well, and that will make things really, really easy for Google to find everything. So that's sort of, you know, some basic things to, you know, check to start with. one of the first things talking about is to make sure that your website has got relevant content in there on it for your customers, for your existing and your new customers or potential new customers. You want to make sure that your content on your website is relevant. So a great way of doing that is to make sure that the terms you're using is part of the everyday language that your consumers are using. So coming from a council background, council, like with a lot of businesses, we have a certain language that we speak that is not necessarily used by the general public. So for example, if you're if you're creating a page on your website around waste and recycling, and it's specific to recycling and what to put in your bin, I would, to make sure that people can find that information really easily, I would use one of the keyword search free tools to find out what terms people are using when they're Googling or searching for what to put in what bin. By using those terms, it means that you can, instead of using council speak, you're putting in, everyday public constituent language on the website, because that is what they're going to be Googling in the search engine. So that's a quick and easy way to make sure that when you're creating a new page or updating information on a page, just cross-checking to make sure the language that is on that page is actually what people are generally using as terms in their search. What else have we got? The other thing around the keyword planner, I just want to quickly, where is it? Keyword planner, I didn't put it on there, sorry. Beck, remind me to put that link on there. If you've got a Google AdWords account, that actually has an amazing keyword planner as part of its tools. And so you can actually use that for it. The other thing is understanding people's user intention. So what I mean by user intention is again, it's linked back to the micro moments, is around in what moment are people searching. And one way to actually find that out is you can just use Google itself. It's really quite simple. So the micro moment is it's about the search intent. So when people tend to use sentences now, like what to do, how to, those sort of terms. And so if you see in this first one, things to do in Port Pirie, this actually, as the search results, at the bottom here, it also says people also asked, what is Port Pirie famous for? What shops are in Port Pirie? Is it safe to live in Port Pirie? So if I was looking at my attractions, what to do in Port Pirie page, I would make sure that there was information about shopping in Port Pirie, because that's obviously of relevance for people. Obviously of relevance from when people are looking for things to do in Port Pirie. So that gives you some idea about what other information to include on your website, and to make sure that your website actually shows up quite high. So the first two results for things to do in Port Pirie is TripAdvisor and Crazy Tourist. So that might be something, if that was a thing for the Port Pirie Council, that they may want to have a look at how to improve the content of what to do in Port Pirie. This on the right-hand side, what's on in Port Pirie, when you start typing into the search bar on Google, it will automatically have a drop-down menu that comes up with what other things people are also searching at the same time. So what's on in Port Pirie, there are some people who are looking for what's on today, what's on this weekend, what's on in Port Pirie SA. So you might want to think about, if there is a what's on section of the Port Pirie website, to think about, whether or not you can call out and highlight what's happening this weekend, because that's obviously a key terms that are being used in Google. And that means also that your ranking of that page will go up because it's quite relevant to what people are searching for. So that's around keyword research. Is that as clear as mud for people? That's all good? Yeah. I can't, as I said previously, I've worked in council for nearly 10 years, and we do get caught up with the terminology we use within our program or in our service, and it doesn't necessarily resonate with the consumer. So even if you're a marketer and you're working with maybe economic development team, and they're wanting to update one of their pages, and they're using some very council lingo, you can actually use these keyword research results to actually show them and say, look, this is actually what people are searching online, to get, if that helps, getting it over the line with them to change the language used on that page. URL best practice. So we all know the URL is the web address, basically, but URL actually, if people want to know, stands for Uniform Resource Locator. It's very bland. I can see why we use the shortened version of URL. So highly, as I said, when Google starts trawling your website, they start with the URL. So keeping them short and succinct is really good, 50 to 60 characters. I know it's hard to keep it that, it is sometimes hard to keep it that limited, because it also depends on how your website is structured and what the menu, the parent and child parent and the grandchild parent, the parent structure can cause some of the URLs to be really long. And if that's the case, that's just the case. However, if you're creating new ones, if you can do shorten URLs, that'd be great. Again, use keywords in the URL, because again, it's all about making sure we've got the right terms up high and prominent. Don't use numbers or letter combinations, because that means nothing. People don't search using letters or number combinations, they use whole words. Don't use underscores, use hyphens if you, and you need to, and don't use hyphens between words. So we don't, if for example, the web page is to do with dog registrations, don't have dog registrations as one word, because of course people don't Google that. It doesn't make sense to Google. You do dog hyphen registration. So they're very clear, succinct words. Always use lowercase. And make sure your website's encrypted. Like they more often than not they are, but you'll notice encrypted means that it starts with HTTPS. The S means there's a security tag. If by chance your website isn't that, talk to your web developer. That's beyond my pay grade, that one. Will not be on that's beyond my technical capabilities, that. Also be aware that if you've got an existing page and you're wanting to you're updating it and you're reviewing it and refreshing it, and you suddenly go, oh, well, the URL doesn't feature keywords in it and I'd want to change the URL. Just be aware that if you do that, you will cause potential 404s to happen. So that means that because that web URL might be in use on various other pages or other websites, and as soon as you go about changing that URL, it means that when people click on that URL on another page, on another website, and land on your page, on your website, it will come up with a 404. So I would get assistance with your web developers, or if you know your content management system well enough, set up what we call a 301 redirect to make sure that the old address, if someone uses the old URL, they're directed to the new URL. So just be aware of that. Metadata is the next thing on the checklist. Metadata, and you'd be like, uh-oh, what is all this? Metadata is actually fields that are in your content management system. So when I mean content management system, it's a system that manages the content of your website, and every page has its own entry, and every page should have fields called meta title and meta description. I find historically a lot of people don't fill out these fields because they don't actually feature on the website itself. They feature on Google search results, and people, because they don't see it on the website itself or the web page itself, they think, oh, it's not relevant. I would say, I remember at council, City of Adelaide, probably 70% of our pages to start with didn't have any of this information. And it meant that our search results came up looking gobbledygook, wasn't of relevance, and people weren't clicking on our search results links. So it can seem kind of cumbersome and time consuming, but it's worth making sure that this metadata is included on every single page of your website. So the meta title is, as you can see, I've got the arrow pointing up to waste and recycling for residents, City of Adelaide. So that is the title, and that does actually directly impact your SEO, your ranking, so how Google ranks you. Only limit it to 30 to 60 characters, including spaces. And I also like to include the brand or the location, so people can see quite clearly, because if it said waste and recycling for residents, people will then have to go, well, for where, who's that relevant to? So it pays from a council point of view to put the name of your council or a common name that the council's referred to as part of the title. The meta description is the copy underneath, and this is where you need to make sure that the copy makes sense, is relevant to not just the title, but also very relevant to what information people are going to find on that page. So this is usually what we call like a quick summary of the key information that you think a consumer would want to know. As you say, it doesn't impact the SEO ranking, but it does impact whether or not someone's going to click on the link or not. So if you got waste and recycling for residents, and then you had something in there about, I don't know, if you don't, okay, that's the other thing I needed to say, is if you don't fill out the meta description, what Google shows there is the first lot of copy that it finds on that page. So it could be something quite irrelevant that's actually at the top of the page. And we'll, I don't know, let's say that it starts talking about organic collections, and people were, and therefore if you don't fill out those lines, it will actually just show just the first couple of lines of your web page, which means that you're also missing out on providing them with key messages. So for example, as you can see here, Cleanaway is a new collection contractor. So that wasn't mentioned on that page at all. But because we found that people were missing getting their bins collected because the schedule had changed, and we knew that people were going to that page to try and find out how to get their bin collected, we thought it would be quite good to actually put a note there, a message to say, we've got a new contractor, your days stay the same, but the timings have changed, so therefore put your bins out the night before. If it's still being missed, you can check online or phone that number. So that was another way of reducing the number of phone calls to the call centre. So the good thing about that meta description is you can change it to whatever suits your purpose, but the main thing is making sure that you want people to click on that link. So making sure the information is relevant. Is that still showing? Sorry, something just weird came with my computer then. Can you see on-page factors to consider? Oh, that's weird. So other things to think about when you're setting up a page or reviewing a page on your content management system is there's the page title. So remember when you're in Google Analytics, you could look at the page, which was the URL or the page title. This is the page title that comes up on the tab up the top here. So this is also a field in your content management system. So this is where you can set it, and highly recommend making sure that these are not only relevant, but also has some keywords in there as well. Always doesn't go astray. Also the structure, making sure the structure of your website is consistent. So using headings, heading 1, heading 2, heading 3 consistently works well. And again, you just do this by through your content management system, because what happens is that if you've got 2 H1s, Google can't figure out what's going on. Oops, can't figure out what's going on. But the other good thing from a usability point of view, having additional headings breaks up the copy, so it makes it easy to read and navigate from the consumer's point of view. And again, I'll keep saying this, make sure you've got keywords used in the headings. So yeah, I think that's about it for there. But yeah, they're really good to be able to use, just also for navigation purposes as well. So the other thing is that with the page title, it also helps to align that with or the meta title. So the meta title and the page title, more often not, should be the same. On-page content. So yeah, this is something I briefly talked about earlier around how Google crawls your website from top to bottom. Also, that's how people scroll your page from top to bottom. So it's really quite important to ensure that you got the most important information at the top of the page as possible. The other thing was, I think Microsoft did a study. It's done a couple of studies, and I think last year they identified that people's concentration span is now 8 seconds. So let's just think about how far someone can go scrolling down a page for 8 seconds. So I would make sure that, you know, your top third of your web page is the prime real estate to have all that information. So if there was any call to actions that you wanted people to do, whether or not to you know, phone, email, all those sort of things, to make sure that it's relatively high up on the page. I would try to keep it sort of around 500 words or more. Sometimes you just can't get that amount of words because it just depends on the content of the page. But 500 words is good because it means that you can include a lot of the keywords in the copy without it standing out like looking like that you've, you know, copied and pasted a whole lot of terms just because you wanted to. The other thing is oh yeah, that's the other thing. Google doesn't trawl attachments. So like if you've got the most important information on a web page and it's held in a PDF or a Word document that people need to download, I would then highly suggest that some of the key information that people are seeking that's in that PDF, I'd pull it out and include it on the web page. I know it seems like it's a bit of a double up. So consider sort of giving a summary of what you'd find in the PDF including into the body of the web page. One, this helps with Google and adds more ranking strength to your page. But two, it also just means that people can actually quickly see, oh yeah, that PDF is worth downloading. So it works both ways. Internal links. So as I mentioned earlier, that Google finds links within a page and then finds the next page through that link, and so forth and so forth and so forth. So it really helps to have cross links or internal links on your website. So for example, if you've got a landing page of your website with the waste, I'll keep with the waste and recycling, you may have separate pages for one about organic waste or hard rubbish collection and things like that. So on your landing page, you might talk about all of that, and then it'd be good to link those terms to that relevant page. So instead of wherever you've used hard rubbish collection on a page, I would recommend hyperlinking it to the page that's relevant, that is about hard rubbish. And I also mean this anywhere through the website. It doesn't mean it's just to do with that waste recycling section. So for example, if you've got a community event going on and it's talking about, what to do with your, hard rubbish or whatever, you could also link that term hard rubbish to your hard rubbish collection page, just as an extra link. As I've said here on the slide, don't use the word click here, because to Google that means nothing. Because click here is, people don't Google the terms click here. So it's very much worth putting in the title of the content that the link's taking people to, or even the title of the page, whichever works best. So it might feel as though you've got links for days, but they work really well. Not just for Google crawling, but also by using appropriate keywords as the anchor text for the link. The customer also knows what they're linking through to. So it's a bit more transparent. So they have a bit more trust in clicking on the link then. Another thing around internal linking is breadcrumbs. So what we call breadcrumbs is they're normally located relatively high up on a web page. And a breadcrumb means it's just like with, Little Red Riding Hood leaving a crumbs behind. It basically shows where the page sits in the navigation of the website. So we're at the fire prevention page here, and this shows the user, but also Google, because it crawls this, I should say, that the fire prevention sits within the fire information section, which is in the council services menu. Oops. This should be automatically activated through your CMS. If you can't see these breadcrumbs on your website, I'd find out from your web developers how to activate it, because it's also good from a consumer point of view for them to go, oh, is this where I am? Oh, actually, I didn't know about there was all these, because they could have landed on this page, fire prevention. It might have gone, oh, yeah, kind of does answer my question, but then they go, oh, fire information, and they'll click on that and be taken to fire information. So it also helps from a customer experience on your website as well. Backlinks. Backlinks are basically, well, they are your website URL being on another website. So in Google Analytics terms, this is called a referral link. In SEO terms, it's called a backlink, because it talks about, it's basically what they call a backdoor entry into your website. It also acts as endorsement for your site, because Google can see that, your website is referred to on multiple websites everywhere, and Google then goes, oh, your website must be, an authority on this topic, so we'll rank you higher. I'm in two minds about this. I definitely agree that your URL should be linked on other websites. How granular those URLs should be can be a bone of contention. So what I mean by granular is having your homepage URL, which is basically www.council.sa.gov.au, is great to have everywhere because it's never going to break, it's never going to change. So it doesn't matter how widespread that link is, that will never have a 404. People will be taken directly to your website. However, sometimes you'll have links from other websites that's to do with a specific topic. So it might be to do with parks and gardens, or it might be to do with dog and cat registrations, and those things. And sometimes those sub-pages, the URLs change. So this could be where some issues happen with 404s. If you have a team who are vigilant around checking 404s and updating links on the web, URLs on the website, I would recommend ensuring that you have more granular URLs on other websites, just so that people their journey to your website is really good. So if they're on a website around sustainability and it says go to your local council for more information about sustainability, and that link then takes them to the sustainability section on your website, on the council website, that customer journey is great because, you know, they've landed on the most relevant information for their council area. However, if they're taken to the homepage, they then have to navigate and they go, oh, it's too hard. So there are pros and cons for about those, but it does depend which way you go. It depends on how vigilant you are with making sure everything's working in working order on the website. And making sure images are optimized. So I mentioned this really briefly earlier around that Google crawls not just text but images, and the way that Google trawls images is when you load a image to your content management system to insert into a web page, it has to have a file name. So the file name, usually with JPEGs, because sometimes people can take the photo on their mobile phone, and therefore the image file name is a series of letters and numbers .jpeg, and a series of letters and numbers is going to be of no relevance to Google. So consider renaming the file so it actually is more reflective of the image. So for this instance here with the dog, you might call it dog in park, or given that the page is around dog exercise area, you might say dog parks image. So again, linking it back to the keywords and the content of the page to make sure it's relevant. Also consider the alt tag. And what I mean by alt tag, when you load an image into your website, there is actually a field that you can fill out called alt tag, and that's basically an alternative tag to give to that image. And what you can do, because it's just tags, you can put a whole series of words that are relevant to the image as well as the page content. And it doesn't have to make sense. You can go dog park, dog playgrounds, whatever it is that's relevant to that content. You can just keep adding words or tagging words to that image.
Kate, it's Ebony here. I'm just wanted to clarify. I had previously thought that alt tags were what accessibility readers read when they were sort of reading a web page for people.
Sorry, it is too.
Oh, okay, good. I just
sorry, I was just going off and I'm getting a bit tired. Sorry about that. You were totally right. Alt tags is a sentence that you can put in for readers, whether or not it's JAWS or whatever reader people use in order to read a website. Again, just making sure the keywords are used in those sentences. sorry, what I was thinking about tags is there are also tags you can place on your web page in the CMS.
In the metadata.
Yeah, in the metadata, yeah. Sorry. Thank you for picking that up, Ebony. Also, the image size you need to be aware of, and a lot of CMSs do limit the size of images, which is good. And the reason why I mention this is sometimes images can be, when you download images from, stock photos or wherever, sometimes you can just download a very large high-res image, and it's 500 megabytes or more. And given a lot of websites are image heavy to make them more aesthetically pleasing, I do stress to make sure that your image sizes, if possible, is 1 megabyte and lower. Same with any of the files, actually, that are on your website, a maximum of 1 megabyte. Because what happens is another SEO criteria that Google uses for website is the speed for which a website loads. And if you have a website that's very heavy with images and files, and they're quite large files, it slows the speed of your website, and Google actually penalises your website and reduces your ranking, but due to the speed. On Google Analytics, under, I think, acquisition, if I remember correctly, there is a website speed metric there that you can go in and have a look. And I'm just trying to remember, I think off memory, it needs to be less than 6 seconds loading. I'll have to look into that and get back to you. I think it's 6 seconds. Oh, we're at the end. So this is, basically what SEO is about good housekeeping. And it's a process that has to be done, and if it's done well, it's a vigilant. You very much follow the checklist every single time you're either creating a new web page or you're reviewing or refreshing a web page. That's another thing to think about in regards to your website. Like, it's quite common with councils that page after page and after page are created because so many things are happening in the council. There are so many new things to talk about, promote. It's good to sort of what we used to do at City of Adelaide is we would run a report at the back end of the CMS and find out what page, how long ago either a page was created or the last time it was updated. So if it was longer than 12 months, we had the rule is that we'd go in and review it and see, one, if it's relevant, does it need to be updated, and it needs to be refreshed. Because a lot can happen in 12 months, and you might find there's a whole lot of pages that you just don't need anymore. You can just go delete, which is great. I wouldn't say delete, it's best to archive them. But it also means that after 12 months, you're actually reviewing and refreshing the content. So it might be images, it might be the keywords, because in 12 months, what people are using to search may have changed. So, 12 months might be, too soon for some councils. So, 18 months might be another thing, but something to consider as a part of your housekeeping is reviewing those pages that haven't been updated in whatever period of time and making sure they're still relevant. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink. SEO tools. So as you know, well, we should know now, Google Analytics is a great tool from a search engine point of view. So whether or not it's finding out if there's any 404s, what web pages may have a very high bounce rate, what pages haven't been visited is also another one. So the least popular pages is worth having a look at, not just the popular ones. Other tools, as I said, the Google Keyword Planner. So I think the next session next week is on Google Ads. So I'll be going through the Google Keyword Planner in more detail there. But Google Trends is another one that you can sign up to, excuse me. And it just shows from you can drill down to South Australia level just what trends what trends are going on in the search world. And this might be things around, sometimes it's good to find out, you know, if you're creating new content around heritage, so the heritage of the area, you know, it might be worth you looking at Google Trends to see, you know, which is more popular over a period of time, heritage or history, just in case, you know, different terminology resonates now that you may not have thought of. Checking links, as I said, the Google Search Console is a great way to do that. There's also a free one called Moslink Explorer. Is good to use as well. Think with Google is actually like an e-newsletter, basically, that you can sign up to with Google. You can get them for relevance globally or within Australia, New Zealand. There's various topics that you can subscribe to. And I find that Link with Google is quite good to keeping up to date with any changes or insights that they've identified. And then, of course, there's the checklist, which hopefully you've all now got. But yeah, SEO is definitely not sexy. It's not a quick win. It is actually a series of processes and tasks that need to be done and kept front of mind when updating or renewing or adding new pages to your website. Does anyone have any questions around that? Because, as I said, it was death by slide. No? I know it's a lot to take in, because if I'm feeling as exhausted as I feel now after talking for 3 hours, you guys must have information overload. So yeah, it is a lot to take in one session, so to speak. Oh, there's some messages here. Yes, the slides will be emailed out as a PDF. It's a lot of stuff, but really helpful, usable. Yeah, it is. As I said, with Google Analytics, just keep playing. Just get more confident with it, slice and dice it, see what you've got, ask yourself some questions about what you'd really like to know and understand about people visiting your site, or about how people are using your website. And then with SEO, it's very much just, if you are not in charge of the website, I would, you could be proactive from your point of view of the website. So if you work in community, I would, you know, take some time and look at all the pages that are relevant to community, and actually go, talk to your web people or your marketing team and say, look, can we have a report or some idea about, you know, when was the last time these pages were reviewed and updated, what were the visitation stats on those, because they can also provide all that information to you if you don't work in that area. But yeah, you can be proactive from your point of view of your part of the website as well, to make sure that everything is tickety-boo, with the right headings and tags and the meta titles and the like. Because you can also check by using Google itself. So if you're in community services and you've got, you know, community centre in Port Lincoln, you can Google that and see what the search result comes up with, because that will tell you pretty quickly what the meta title, meta description is or hasn't, or if it's been used or not. So there's other ways to influence the SEO of the website, even if you don't manage it yourself.
Hey, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You were talking about cleaning up old pages, and I'm just sort of I've only just taken over the website for our council in the past 6 months, and just overwhelmed at how many active pages there are going back years. How does that affect things? Does that make using our website slower if you've got all this stuff there? Because I guess councils, like, you want to be transparent and all that and have the minutes from 6 years ago there and all that, but just wonder what the implications are.
And that's where you have to assess it in it holistically. So one, you need to think, okay, well, if that information is a legislative requirement, or if it actually meets the strategic objectives of council, which is to be transparent, then I would leave it alone. However, if you've got files on there that are exceedingly high, if you have time, try and reduce the size of those files and reattach them is another way of doing it. If you've got pages that are just really, really old, the bigger the website gets, the longer it takes to load. So it actually does affect your website speed. So I would look at well, if it's 6 years old and it's really not relevant, I'd just delete it. You can actually make pages, well, I don't know, depending on your content management system, but what we used to do at council is we would just go make not live. So it would sit behind the scenes. It meant that it wouldn't load up onto the website, so that one, if someone suddenly went, oh my God, where's our web page? We could reinstate it. And sometimes you have pages that are only relevant to seasons. So you might have Christmas, for example, you know, a whole section that's only really relevant around Christmas time. So 6 months of the year, you can actually take it offline, and then you can update it and put it back online when it comes around to the next Christmas. So there's ways of sort of doing it that way, so that one, you're reducing the overall size of your website. Because I mean, City of Adelaide, we ended up having something like stupid, like 10,000 pages on our website, because we just kept creating new stuff and never actually thought about, okay, let's get rid of the old stuff.
Yeah, and I guess if we're all using, well, a lot of councils would use Squiz for their website. I'm seeing that in the chat there. We use that, and it's got a latest news section, which we use a lot. It's probably the most used thing that we update, but I don't think we ever delete stuff off that. And so that's things like, oh, there's some roadworks happening, or, you know, oh, there's this event, and, you know, stuff like that changes week to week.
It's date sensitive, and I'd get rid of it, because from a point of view from a consumer, if that's coming up in search result and they click it and then I go, but that was from 2 years ago, I don't want to know about that road closure.
So you'd potentially like archive from a few weeks back or a few months back or something.
I don't know Squiz, so unfortunately I used a few other CMSs, so I don't know whether or not about the back end of Squiz. I think, Beck, could you, if they aren't able to answer these questions between them, are you able to give this back, send some of these questions to Sama? Because, yeah, I wouldn't, oh yeah, thank you.
That's okay. It might be more of a question we can ask the Squiz people who train us in that, but yeah, but it's just interesting to know. I'd never thought about the fact you need to sort of clean out stuff on a website to keep it quick. So you do it on a computer, but you don't think about doing it on a website.
Because you don't see it, and therefore it's not front of mind. So that's why I said SEO is just like good housekeeping. Sometimes you just got to have to like do a spring clean, and put it in your diary and go once a month, and, you know, or once every 3 months, I'm going to spend a day doing this, and it might be, you know, reviewing old pages or something. But yeah.
And then what you were talking about with changing the names of, say, a dog picture, does that just mean you have more people going to your website if they're looking for a picture of a dog in a park?
No. What happens is, because Google can't actually read an image. Yeah. So it's like,
it's reading a file name. Yeah.
It's reading a file name. So what it does is, because you've used the key, hopefully if you use relevant keywords in the file name, it just adds to the ranking and the relevance of that page. So Google goes.
So Google goes, oh, that's a bit more exciting. I'll make people see that more.
Yeah. So it doesn't actually link people to the image. It just enables more keywords to be crawled by Google, and Google goes, oh no, this page is very relevant to that search result for that person.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, because otherwise images and files can be lost real estate or lost opportunities, as I call them. So if you don't make the file name, if you don't include keywords in the file name, or able to use additional descriptors, especially around the images, I just think it's a lost opportunity. That's all.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So we can use words that might be trending and
but you need
stuff
to also
we know
make
people are
sure,
searching.
yeah, you should need to also marry up those words with the content on the page, because you don't want to bring people to the page and then go, oh, I can't find anything about dog registrations here, when it's actually a page around dog parks. So still making it relevant to the content of the page.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
That's all right. So I think most of the questions were around Squiz, which I can't answer. Sorry about that, people. I don't have access. What is it? Stephanie. Yes, happy to help any way I can. Either we can stay online after everyone goes. Maybe I can help. I can only stay. Oh yeah, it's still early, so yes, can definitely try and help.
Thanks.
No worries. Okay, so were there any other questions?
Nope.
So if there are any other Squiz questions, yeah, just even post them in the chat, because then Beck and Zama can then also inquire with Squiz, just in case, because it may be that, I don't know if it is this case with Squiz, if the field's not, it may not have been activated, so it may not be showing up on your CMS page. So yeah, if that's all. Sorry, just to clarify, if it's archived, it won't show that. It depends on the terminology used for your CMS. So we used a CMS called Craft, and you used to be able to just select that it wasn't live. So it was still sitting there in your CMS, but it wasn't publicly viewable. I know in a previous CMS, it used to be you just archived it, and it meant that it was just an inactive file that you could then reactivate. I would ask via Squiz about that. No, it doesn't. Oh, sorry. It won't slow the website? No, it won't, because the website is only going to bring up the live pages. Anything that's archived isn't viewable publicly, and therefore doesn't affect the speed of the live website. Look, sometimes you ponder on things, and you have a go yourself, and you probably end up having 5 million questions. Please just email them through to Becky and Sama. If they aren't able to answer them, they'll forward them on to me and I can help. So yeah, I'm hoping there are questions, because it means that you are exploring and interrogating and trying. But yeah, so those of you who signed up for next week, I think next week's on Google Ads, Search Engine Marketing, and Introduction to Facebook, if I remember correctly. So same time, same bat channel next week for those of you who I will see. So thanks again, and I'm sorry for the death by slide for the morning.